My sister, the bank manager, mocked me for asking to withdraw $100. I came back with a $3.5 billion fund transfer. She turned pale and begged in front of everyone. My name is Rachel Bryant, 36 years old, living in the state of Indiana. I don't drive a luxury car and I don't wear designer clothes. My coat had been stitched twice at the sleeves, and the shoes I wore that day. They weren't new, but they were clean. I walked into the Evermont community branch on a Monday morning, just intending to withdraw $200, not for myself, but for Mrs. Marjorie, the widow who lives downstairs. She had just lost her beloved dog and was struggling to afford her heart medication. She never said anything, but I saw the redness in her eyes when she opened the fridge, and all that was left was an expired carton of milk. The bank lobby felt cold and too pristine, like everything had been polished just enough to make people with less feel like they didn't belong. I stood at the service counter, clutching my old canvas wallet as the sound of high heels echoed behind me. Sharp, rhythmic, like a warning bell. Well, look who it is, our hometown hero, here to make a withdrawal. I turned. That voice, I'd know it even with my eyes closed. Vanessa Donovan, my half-sister on my mother's side, now the branch manager of Evermont. She stood 3 steps away, arms crossed, wearing a crisp white suit, and her brown hair curled to perfection. I simply said, "I'm here to withdraw some cash. I have something to take care of." Vanessa smirked, glancing over my plain clothes like they spoke louder than I ever could. "This bank serves customers, not strangers dropping by for pocket change." She said it loudly enough for the entire lobby to hear. A couple standing near the teller window turned their heads. A young receptionist behind the front desk looked uncomfortable. No one said a word. They just stared at me like I was a glitch in their well-oiled machine. I tightened my grip on my bag strap. "I'm not begging. I've an account here." Vanessa stepped closer, leaning down as if she were sharing something kind, but every word sliced through like a blade wrapped in velvet. "Rachel, we're family. You should know better. Don't humiliate yourself in front of strangers." I took a deep breath. My throat tightened, but I had learned long ago, cruel words dissolve faster when you don't give them oxygen. I turned away, said nothing, didn't look back. As I pushed through the heavy glass door, the cold wind slapped my face like a wake-up call. I paused for a few seconds in front of the glass, seeing my reflection, head held high, eyes steady. I didn't cry. I had run out of tears for people who never truly saw me as family. They had no idea who I was now. No one here did. All they saw was an old coat, a worn wallet, and assumed I came to beg. But I had once built a system that this very bank was now begging to partner with. They had signed the agreement never knowing the co-founder was standing right in front of them today, posing as someone unworthy of service. I walked home, past streets glazed with melting ice and scattered dead leaves. My footsteps were silent, but my mind wasn't. I replayed every word she said, every condescending glance. And then, one single sentence surfaced in my mind with perfect clarity. "They will remember me, but not in the way they expect." Back at my small apartment, I made a cup of ginger tea and powered on my old laptop. The screen blinked with a familiar string of numbers. The authentication chain I had created 4 years ago. I typed it in without a tremble. Because I was ready. I remember the look my stepfather, Mr. Charles, gave me when I was 19, an expression that blended pity with contempt. He sat at the walnut dining table, sipping his coffee slowly, and said in front of everyone, "This girl in finance? She can't even remember a phone number." My mother didn't defend me. She just looked at me, then changed the subject to the baked pasta dish. As for Vanessa, already done with her MBA, she gave a soft chuckle and shrugged, as if not wanting to embarrass me. But her eyes held more satisfaction than anyone else's. I once told them I wanted to go into fintech, a field barely emerging on the East Coast. They laughed in my face. My uncle Noah, my mother's younger brother, even bet I'd end up selling insurance within 3 months. I never came back, not once. I started at the very bottom, making coffee for a software development team in Pittsburgh. No one knew I had studied information systems at a community college, and had to drop out because I couldn't afford tuition. No one cared that I slept in a friend's basement, under a blanket with holes surrounded by damp walls. But I could take it. I knew what I needed: time and the right to observe in silence. 3 years later, I had become one of the most trusted system engineers on the team, in charge of internal security for a pilot blockchain platform. I didn't post pictures on social media. No one knew who I was outside the private network, and I liked it that way. My real name gradually disappeared from all public documentation. I used the alias E. Ward, a combination of my grandfather's middle name and the name of a bird I once rescued in Karen's backyard, the only neighbor who ever treated me like a normal human being. When the first product launched, I was a co-owner of the source code, but I didn't hold the shares under my name. I placed them under a shell company, Cedar Loop Ventures, registered in Delaware, and moved the money into a private trust located in Nebraska. I didn't do it all alone. I met Marco, a legal and financial expert, at a closed-door conference in Denver. He noticed my handwriting in a notebook, handed me his business card, and didn't ask a single question. Later, he became my partner, the one who helped me build a multi-layered legal structure so complex, it would take anyone 6 months to trace the origin of funds, if they didn't have internal access. We called it SnowTrace, an investment system programmed to respond to market shifts using 3-tiered logic, cash flow analysis, manipulation detection, and AI-based reaction models. Subtle, precise. No one needed to know who was behind it. By the time I turned 32, SnowTrace managed over $700 million in investment assets, spread across 12 countries. Every transaction was encrypted at a military-grade level. There were no press features, no interviews, no CEO portraits. I existed under a carefully designed fog because I knew, if I ever needed to step forward, it would be my choice, not anyone else's demand. Vanessa? She had no idea that the bank branch she'd been managing since last year was one of the 3 institutions SnowTrace had selected for its liquidity trial operations. She personally signed the asset handling contract for Hillcrest Holdings, an anonymous name I created, registered in Utah. I once considered telling her. A call, an email, but then I realized, waiting for the right moment to show up. That was the most devastating move of all. The way she called me a beggar in front of those customers. It was perfect. Like a careless sketch smeared by its own arrogance when the color bleeds. That night, I opened the internal dashboard. Line after line of data loaded. Deposits, withdrawal triggers, settlement windows. And right beside it, the admin panel for the Evermont branch, where Vanessa Donovan's name sat on the list of mid-tier personnel. I clicked open the tab labeled Internal Override Rights. I didn't press anything yet. I just stared at the words on the screen, because I knew, when I disappeared from the family, they thought I had given up. At exactly 9:43 on Wednesday morning, I stepped out of a charcoal gray Lincoln, neatly parked in front of Evermont Bank's 8th Avenue branch. My sunglasses slid down the bridge of my nose as I looked up at the familiar building, the same place that once called me a beggar, now waiting to receive me in a completely different role. I wore a tailored dark suit, my hair tied low. Not a single piece of jewelry except for a classic Citizen watch. In my hand was a soft black leather bag. Inside it, a thin folder with a triple encrypted QR code. This wasn't a visit to withdraw $200. This was to reclaim the truth they had once rejected. Inside, the bank still smelled of polished wood and artificial mint. A new receptionist, about 23, smiled nervously as I approached. "Good morning, ma'am. How can I help you? I have an appointment. It's under RB representative of Rainwell Capital Holdings." She frowned. Before she could even check the system, the screen in front of her flashed red 3 times. "A private priority alert code," she stammered. "I'm sorry, I have to call the manager." Maureen Donovan appeared just 20 seconds later, hair softly curled. Berry-toned lipstick. A rehearsed smile. But when her eyes met mine, a wave of shock swept across her face like the first cold wind of winter. "Rachel, did you say, Rainwell Holdings?" I didn't respond. I simply held out the folder. Lauren reached for it, clearly about to say something when the QR code was scanned by the system behind the reception desk. A single ping sounded. The entire system paused for 4 minutes for administrator-level verification. Doors locked. All transactions froze. The young associate rushed over to Lauren. "Is Lauren? The system says there's a withdrawal request of over $900 million from Rainwell's trust account. The verification code. It's real." Lauren turned pale. She stared at me, speechless. For the first time in her life, with no insult to hurl. "What's going on?" I kept my voice calm, my gaze steady. "I'm simply doing what any client has the right to do. Withdraw their funds. The only difference is, this isn't spare change." Lauren glanced at the associate's screen. A line of text blinked clearly. Rainwell Capital Holdings. Platinum Tier Trust Account. Verified by Rachel E. Bryant. She took a half step back, one hand on the desk to steady herself. "No way. I'm the one you once called a beggar." I paused. "I'm also the one who deposited over $1.2 billion into the system your branch now runs, without anyone noticing." A senior employee, Raymond, the regional vice president, emerged from the second floor, around 50, with a serious face and purposeful stride. "Excuse me, Ms. Bryant? We've been notified of a high-security request from Rainwell Holdings. Please follow me to the executive conference room." Lauren opened her mouth, but Raymond gently cut in. "This matter is above your authority, Lauren. Please refrain from intervening." I walked past Vanessa, Manager Donovan, without a glance. She stood there, frozen, like an ice sculpture beginning to melt. The conference room on the 3rd floor had frosted glass walls and a long, brown, leather-covered table. 2 security staff flanked the door. I placed the folder on the table and entered the second-level authentication code, triggering Evermont Bank's Trust Freeze Protocol, a rare procedure. 12 minutes later, 3 of the 5 regional directors joined by video call. I kept it short. "I'm the person behind Rainwell Capital Holdings. Over the past 6 years, your bank has handled more than $2.8 billion from my system, mostly routed through the branch managed by Lauren Donovan. I'm not here to destroy anything. I'm here to assess transparency and how you treat high-value clients, especially when they appear as ordinary citizens. No one interrupted. They understood I wasn't speaking for effect. I placed a simple request on the table. Either the bank restructures its practices and keeps Rainwell's contract, or I move the entire fund within 24 hours. No threats, just the natural consequence of an invisible slap delivered 6 years ago. Downstairs, Lauren hadn't moved from the reception desk. Staff whispered. The doors stayed locked. The bank held still for someone they once deemed unworthy of service. At exactly 10:20 a.m., I stepped out of the third-floor conference room, folder signed and secured. The contract between Rainwell Capital Holdings and Evermont Bank would remain blank, but not under Lauren's authority. I walked down the hallway. Through the frosted glass, I saw a group of employees clustered in the lobby. No one spoke loudly, just a hush of glances and indistinct murmurs. One of them whispered into their phone, "She's from Rainwell. They call her the audit ghost." I didn't care. I only wanted to see her one last time, on the same terms she once chose to humiliate me. Public. Without reason, without remorse, I descended to the main floor, heading straight past the reception desk. No one stopped me. No one dared. Lauren was sitting at the far end of the waiting area, her head down, vacant stare. When she heard my heels stop, she looked up. Her face, once smug and commanding, the woman who ordered her staff not to serve anyone without a VIP account, was now pale, her lipstick smudged, makeup unable to hide the panic in her eyes. She stood, took a hurried step toward me, her voice already crumbling. "Rachel, please, let me explain this. You're misunderstanding." I met her gaze, steady and firm. "Misunderstanding? What did you call me in front of all your customers?" "Oh right, beggar." Lauren lifted her hand, then let it fall. "I didn't know then. I didn't realize you were..." "Who? The girl who used to split stale toast with you in Mom's kitchen? Or the one whose scholarship application you tossed on the dining table, saying, 'Stop dreaming'?" Her lips trembled. "You have every right to be angry. But please, don't cancel the contract. If you pull the funds, this branch will be flagged for review. You know that. There are people here who had nothing to do with it." I walked slowly toward her. Every step echoed through the space that had once swallowed my voice in silence. "When I stood here 3 days ago, I wasn't on your priority client list either. But did you consider the consequences?" Lauren wavered. She looked around. Staff were gathering. Some I recognized. They had watched me get humiliated that Monday. Now they were silent. But it wasn't indifference. They were waiting. And then, something I hadn't expected. Lauren dropped to her knees right there in the middle of the lobby. No more image, no more status. She looked up at me, voice shaking. "Please, I was wrong. I have a child. If I lose this job, I don't know what I'll do. Rachel, I'm begging you." Not a whisper, not a laugh, just the held breath of an entire room. I looked down at the woman who once pushed me out of my own home. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel hurt. Only a single truth settled quietly in my chest, like an irreversible conclusion. I spoke, low but crystal clear. "I didn't destroy you. You destroyed yourself." For a moment, her eyes widened, like someone had just slapped her. She stammered, "I never imagined you'd become this." "Exactly. That's why you underestimated me. And that's why you lost everything." "I didn't come for revenge. I came to reclaim what you trampled, my worth." I turned around, not waiting for a reply. No employee blocked my path. They stepped aside as if I was something entirely outside the old rulebook they'd always known. The glass doors slid open. Cold air hit my face. I didn't flinch. I didn't hesitate. I didn't look back. 2 days after Laura knelt in the bank lobby, my phone started ringing nonstop. The first call came from my mother, Janet, a number I hadn't saved in nearly 8 years. I didn't pick up. She called again that evening, then early the next morning, and twice more by noon. No voicemails. No emails, but I knew one thing for sure. My mother never calls that many times unless something is behind it. On Friday evening, I received the first text message from Angela, my half-sister, wife of a man named Craig Morrison, once known as North Indiana's real estate genius until he got sued for tax fraud 3 years ago. Angela's text read, "How have you been? Heard about you on the financial news. The whole family's surprised. Mom's been talking about you for days. Want to have dinner this weekend? Been too long since a family meal. I miss you." I didn't reply. 5 minutes later, another message came. "By the way, Craig just came up with an idea for a lakeside motel chain. Big potential. Even a small investment from you would mean a lot." And just like that, missing me turned into a shameless pitch. I leaned back on my sofa, set the phone down, opened my tablet, and pulled up Morrison Group's financial map. 3 taps later, I could see they were discreetly draining a shared retirement fund to raise money for a project that hadn't even secured a building permit. If I put in money now, I'd be dragging my name into the exact kind of legal risk I'd spent my entire career avoiding. I shook my head, not from disappointment, but because I knew this moment would come. No one called when I lost my job at 25. No one checked in when I moved 3 times in 8 months because I couldn't afford rent. No one remembered me when I was sleeping in a ground floor apartment during freezing winters, legs up on a mini heater while coding my first security system. And now, when the name Rachel Bryant appeared on the strategic investor list of 3 Midwest funds, they suddenly called it family. Then came another email from my mother. Subject line in all caps, "Family is forever." Inside was a long, emotional paragraph, followed by a preliminary investment breakdown from Craig's real estate proposal. I read every word carefully, my mother wrote. "I know I used to be strict, never really understood your passion for tech, but I was only worried about your future. Now that I see your success, I'm so proud. Craig is a smart man, just a bit tight on capital. If you could pitch in, it would be such a blessing for our family." A blessing for our family. I repeated the phrase in my mind. Maybe they thought I'd feel touched. But I didn't feel anger or hatred, just a cold, crystal clear understanding. That evening, I scheduled dinner with Angela, not because I planned to invest, but because I wanted to look them in the eye and see just how far they'd go for a promise of funding. We met at an Italian restaurant in South Indianapolis. Angela arrived early, wearing a light blazer and a fresh haircut, already seated with Craig. Both smiled brightly as I walked in. "Oh my God, you look so different, Rachel." "Successful even," Craig chimed in. "We always knew you had it in you." I didn't smile. I quietly opened the menu and ordered water and a salad. After some small talk about fun childhood memories and good times at Lake Michigan, Craig pulled out a folder and set it on the table. "Not trying to pressure you, just thought. If you're interested in the Clearview Lake Motel project, this is prime time. We've already got seed investors from Arizona." I looked straight at him. "So if I don't invest, is it still prime time?" Craig faltered slightly. Angela jumped in gently. "Don't take it the wrong way. It's just for once I feel like we could really collaborate. I want us to be closer as sisters." I nodded, calmly interrupting. "Like when I applied to your firm 10 years ago and you told me I lacked energy for the job?" Angela froze. Craig sipped his wine. No one said a word. I leaned down, closed the folder, and slid it back across the table. "I'm not investing. And I don't do business with people who once thought I wasn't good enough to sit at the same table." Angela winced. "You're still upset over that?" I stood up, grabbed my bag, and pulled a thin metal card from my wallet. My investor credential, engraved with the words, Rainwell Capital Holdings. Managing Director R.E. Bryant. I laid it on the table and said softly, a will diminutive. "I'm not upset. I just remember. And memories, once clearly recalled, are never to be reused." As a fundraising tool. Saturday evening, I arrived at Claremont Vine, the restaurant that used to be our family's go-to Thanksgiving spot. They chose it for the warm golden lighting, crisp white tablecloths, and because the owner was one of my mother's close friends. I arrived at exactly 6:50 p.m., wearing a charcoal gray turtleneck sweater, black slacks, and my hair in a neat bun. Nothing flashy, but enough to make one thing clear. I wasn't there to reclaim my place in the family. I was there to return the truth of what that place had always been. At the table, 7 place settings, 5 half-filled wine glasses, and 1 empty chair at the head. They had saved that seat for me. An act that might appear thoughtful, but I knew better. That chair wasn't for me. It was for the role they expected me to play. The one who had to prove she belonged. I took my seat. Angela, Mom, Craig, and a few relatives were already there. Lauren was present too, her makeup meticulous, her gaze evasive. No one brought up the bank incident. No one asked what I wanted to order. My mother spoke first, her voice sweet, but hollow. "We're so lucky to be together like this. Family is a place that's always open, no matter the misunderstandings." I offered a small smile, just enough. A door being open doesn't mean everyone deserves to walk through it. The table tensed. Craig forced a laugh. Angela reached for her wineglass, but didn't drink. The room's warmth shifted in an instant, turning to lead. I placed my leather bag on the chair beside me and slowly pulled out a slim, brown folder labeled, Inheritance, Property, Reassessment of 1998 Will. "Anyone remember Grandpa?" I asked, calmly, without accusation. "He left a farm in Wheeler Township, along with a trust fund in my name." Lauren blinked. Angela sat up straighter. Craig's arm rested on the table, visibly uneasy. "But when I turned 19, Mom told me everything had been redistributed more fairly. That I got nothing, and I believed her." I opened the folder. The first page was a scanned copy of my grandfather, Howard E. Bryant's original will, signed in 1998, notarized in Porter County. It read, "I hereby bequeath all land and assets in Wheeler Township to my granddaughter, Rachel E. Bryant, upon her high school graduation." I turned the document toward my mother. "You once told me Grandpa didn't leave anything behind. Then what is this?" Mom froze, her lips tightly pressed. Angela looked down, avoiding my gaze. I flipped to the next page, a 2007 deed transfer showing Angela as the recipient, co-signed by Janet R. Morrison. We signed to transfer the land to Angela, 7 months after Grandpa died, and just 3 weeks before I started my first semester at community college. No one said a word. A waiter approached with a pitcher of water. I waved him away. This needed to be heard in full. And I didn't just find this. I also have the sale documents. Angela, you sold that land in 2012 for nearly $1.4 million after subdividing and cleaning up the paperwork. Angela whispered, "You don't understand." Just what? I cut in, my voice low but firm. Just assumed I'd never find out. I pulled out the final page, a private legal investigation confirming the full transfer chain, with a note, reading, "Original beneficiary was illegally excluded. Potential collusion suspected." Silence. Craig swallowed hard. My mother dabbed her forehead with a napkin. Lauren stood up first. She didn't say a word. Didn't look at me. Didn't apologize. She simply walked out. Next were the Fields, paternal relatives who once said I lacked financial acumen. One of them muttered vaguely, "Sorry, we have an early morning." Angela clutched Craig's hand as if trying to say something. But in the end, they followed. That left me and my mother. She didn't speak. Neither did I. Finally, I stood. Gathered the documents. Adjusted my bag. Just before leaving, I said loud enough for every remaining ear to hear, "I'm not here to reclaim the past. I'm here to return the truth everyone tried to bury." And in that still, heavy room, I walked away, leaving behind a family that no longer had the courage to face the very things they once called for the greater good. 1 week after the family dinner that felt more like a funeral, I arrived at the headquarters of the Bryant Morrison Trust Foundation in downtown Indianapolis. The 3-story building once belonged to my grandfather, Howard E. Bryant. He had converted it into the Operations Center for Community Support Projects back in 1995. After his passing, my mother, Janet, and son-in-law Craig took over. But in the nearly 2 decades since, the place had lost all resemblance to his original vision. It had become a stage for self-promotion, run by people who shared my last name but had no understanding of what the word trust truly meant. I entered the main hall. A gleaming gold plaque read, "Bryant Morrison Foundation, serving legacy through compassion." Reading that slogan now felt like hearing someone whisper a lie in broad daylight. I went straight up to the second floor, where the boardroom was waiting. 7 trustees sat at the table, 3 of them family members, the rest independent supervisors hired during my grandfather's era. I placed a slim folder in the center of the table. My voice didn't need to be loud, only clear. Under Clause 7.3 of the Bryant Heritage Recovery Act, I, as the original named beneficiary, formally call for the restructuring of the Executive Board. All disbursements from the past 6 years will be subject to audit, including those allocated to real estate ventures, resort investments, and internally prioritized scholarships. Dorothy Henson, the oldest independent board member, rested her hands on the table and nodded. "Ms. Rachel, we reviewed the documents you submitted last week. The numbers don't lie." "No, they don't," I replied. "But the people who approved them have been lying for far too long." Angela, seated to my right, was stone-faced. Craig wasn't present. He claimed to be on an out-of-state business trip, though I knew better. My legal office had sent a financial investigation notice to his firm that Monday. I opened my tablet and projected it onto the room's TV screen. The spreadsheet appeared. "This is the budget allocation for the STEM Scholarship Development Program for female high school students, approved in 2021. In the past 3 years, only 12% of funds reached actual recipients. The rest?" I tapped the screen. "Redirected to media expenses, gala events, and expanded administrative costs. Translation, family payroll." Angela pressed her lips together. No rebuttal. I turned toward the 2 remaining board members who had been appointed by my mother. "Effective today, I am terminating all internally allocated roles. Every executive position not based on qualifications will be reviewed within 30 days. All outsourced contracts, if lacking transparency or tied to family, will be frozen pending investigation." A deep male voice spoke. Jared Olson, who had worked with my grandfather for over a decade. "You know, restructuring family-based systems will cause resistance, right?" "I'm not fighting family, Mr. Olson. I'm fighting the habit of treating a charitable foundation like a personal wallet with a morality label on it." No one responded. Behind me, the screen now displayed dwindling fund graphs, misdirected cash flow charts, and a list of students rejected from support simply for lacking the right referral. I looked to Dorothy. "Starting next week, we'll open recruitment for a new executive director, publicly listed, merit-based, and subject to an independent financial ethics review." Angela leaned forward, finally speaking. "I know you have the right, Rachel, but you don't have to go this far. Mom stayed silent for 10 years, knowing Grandpa left my name on the trust I cut in, and you stayed silent while signing off on my land. Silence isn't harmless, Angela. Silence is complicity." I stood, closed the folder, and looked around the room. "I'm not here to fix reputations. I'm here to restart a legacy, and if anyone feels they don't belong, that door isn't locked." That afternoon at 3 o'clock, the board voted. All restructuring proposals passed with a 6-to-1 majority. The lone dissenter, unsurprisingly, was Angela. I stepped out onto the third-floor balcony. The March wind was still cold, but my skin no longer recoiled from it. Down below, kids from the spring scholarship program were playing basketball on the community court where, next year, we would add a new open library and computer lab. I didn't need applause. I just needed to know those kids wouldn't be denied support because they didn't have a cousin serving as board secretary. And just like that, the era of nepotism, at least here, was officially over. 11 months after the Bryant Morrison Foundation's restructuring, I stood in a completely different space. No more cast bronze plaques bearing the family surname. No more offices plastered with gala photos from 2002. In front of me stood a 2-story glass and steel building on the edge of Clearview Lake. Once just an abandoned parking lot, now it bore a simple name, the Rachel Initiative. Not because I needed people to remember my name, but because I wanted the girls who had once been overlooked, like I was at 19, to know someone once stood aside to make space for them. This organization doesn't host galas, doesn't send out gold-foiled invitations to investors. We simply maintain a list of high school girls from underserved communities, studying engineering, coding, robotics, or AI. Each of them receives a computer, a mentor, and access to intensive coursework through technical colleges across the state. I wasn't just opening the door for them, I was removing the gate entirely. Inside the main office, just beyond the glass entrance, a raised quote on the wall reads, "Pulled from my grandfather's journal, which I found in the decaying wooden cabin beside the old Wheeler farm. Goodness isn't measured by reputation, it's measured by the opportunities you leave behind." I read that line the night I signed over the last parcel of Wheeler land to the local government, without taking a cent, so they could turn it into a public nature preserve. My name isn't on the plaque, but I was there. On launch day, I gave no speech, no ribbon cutting. I just sat quietly in the back row on a wooden chair, watching a group of 11th graders present their recycled, flood-resistant housing model built using a 3D printer. One Latina girl with braided hair stood trembling but firm. She shared how her school counselor had blocked her scholarship application, saying girls should stick to the social sciences. I looked at her and saw myself, 15 years ago, hands stained with ink, eyes that no one ever called fit to lead. After the presentation, a few parents came over to shake my hand. Some recognized me from the article about the family trust restructuring. Most didn't, and didn't need to know I'd once managed a multi-billion-dollar investment network. I liked it that way. That evening, after everyone had left, I walked out of the building and followed a narrow path along Clearview Lake. The breeze was soft, the rippling water reflecting the final rays of spring sun. I stopped under the large oak tree, where we'd placed a white stone bench engraved with the words, "For those who were overlooked, but never undone." I sat down, took off my glasses, and closed my eyes. No luxury car parked nearby, no power badge hanging from my neck, just bird song and the smell of damp earth. I thought of my mother. She no longer called. The charity fund investigation had forced her to withdraw from all community boards. Angela moved to North Carolina, quiet on social media. Lauren? She lost her position, but seemed to find a new job at a small bank. I didn't follow up. No need. I didn't write any letters of forgiveness, didn't post any inspiring speeches. I didn't need them to admit I was right. I just needed to live without proving it anymore. My phone buzzed. A message from Janelle, the girl who once called me the coolest Rachel ever for refusing to wear a blazer to meetings. The message read, "You coming to the AI feedback class tomorrow? I need someone to test the emotional response algorithm." I laughed. No hesitation. Of course, save me a seat. I stood up, brushed off my sweater, and walked toward the small campus in the distance. The late afternoon light filtered through the trees, casting my shadow longer than usual. But I no longer felt small. Because in the end, what I reclaimed wasn't land or legacy or family ties, it was myself, and I no longer needed anyone's permission to keep it. Rachel's story is a powerful reminder that true worth isn't measured by family approval or surface-level prestige, but by the courage to reclaim your freedom. In a world still full of favoritism and prejudice, her journey shows us that sometimes the deepest form of revenge isn't retaliation, but rebuilding with your own two hands, and never letting anyone take away your right to choose your life. What would you have done in Rachel's place? Would you forgive or keep your distance? Share your thoughts in the comments below and don't forget to follow our channel for more powerful real-life stories about family, betrayal, and the strength to rise above it all.